I'm 28 years old, working really hard as a marketing executive, and dealing with a chronic illness that makes every day tough. But the hardest part of my life isn't that, it's my family. I have a younger sister, Clara, who's 25, and she's the favorite. My parents, John and Linda, absolutely adore her. As for me, I'm lucky if they even notice I'm there. Just last week, I finally got the promotion I've been working so hard for. I was excited, so I called home to share the news. Mom, guess what? I got the promotion. Oh, that's nice, dear, she replied. Did you hear Clara's boyfriend took her to that new fancy restaurant downtown? And just like that, my big moment was ignored. It's always like this. Then, the big news came. At a family dinner, Clara came in, waving her hand around. I'm engaged, Rick proposed. Everyone was cheering, Mom was crying, and Dad opened a bottle of champagne. Meanwhile, I was trying to hide my discomfort as pain from my illness flared up, not that anyone noticed. We need to start planning right away, Mom said excitedly. Miriam, clear your schedule, we'll need all the help we can get. I wanted to remind them about my health, but why bother? They'd just say I was being dramatic. The next few weeks were a blur of wedding catalogs, visiting venues, and endless talks about flowers and dresses. No one really asked my opinion, and when they did, it was quickly shut down. No, Miriam, we can't have lilies, Clara's allergic, remember? Of course, I remembered. I was the one who had rushed her to the hospital twice, because of it. But if I suggested something that didn't fit Clara's perfect wedding plans, it was immediately dismissed. One day, during one of those exhausting planning meetings, I decided to escape to my favorite coffee shop. That's where I met Ben. He noticed me struggling as I reached for my coffee. Are you okay? He asked, genuinely concerned. For once, someone was actually paying attention to me. We started talking, and I found out he was a doctor. When I mentioned my illness, he didn't brush it off or change the subject, he listened. We ended up chatting for hours. Ben became my safe space in the middle of all the wedding chaos. He understood my health issues, respected my job, and actually cared about my thoughts. It was a breath of fresh air. Then came the surprise. Clara approached me one day, beaming with excitement. Miriam, I want you to be my maid of honor. I was shocked. We hardly talked outside of family events, and now she wanted me to play such a big role in her wedding. Are you sure? We're not really close, Clara. Don't be silly, she said. You're my sister, it's tradition. And there it was, not because she valued our relationship, but because it was what people expected. I wanted to say no to Clara's offer to be her maid of honor, to protect myself from all the stress I knew it would bring, but the look on my parents' faces told me that saying no wasn't an option. So, here I am, about to take on the role of maid of honor for a sister who hardly knows me, in a wedding planned by parents who barely notice me. All this, while trying to keep up with my demanding job and manage my chronic illness. But at least I have been. Maybe things are finally looking up. Little did I know, the worst was still ahead. The big day arrived. I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck, but I got out of bed anyway. I wasn't going to give anyone another reason to call me dramatic. I forced a smile as I helped Clara into her wedding dress. You look beautiful, I said, and I meant it. No matter what, she was still my sister. Thanks, she replied, barely looking at me. Just don't mess up your makeup crying during the ceremony. I want the photos to be perfect. The ceremony went by in a blur of white lace and teary vows. I stood there, holding my bouquet, feeling worse by the minute, but I kept it together. I had to. At the reception, I found Ben sitting at our table. You okay? He asked, holding my hand. You look pale. I'm fine, I lied, just need to get through this. Suddenly, my mom appeared and grabbed my arm. Miriam, it's time for your speech, don't embarrass your sister. I stood up, feeling a little unsteady as I made my way to the microphone. The room was spinning. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. The last thing I remember was the floor rushing up toward me. I woke up to see Ben's worried face hovering above me. Miriam, can you hear me? He asked. What happened? I mumbled. You collapsed, Ben said. We need to get you to a hospital. That's when I heard my mother's sharp voice. Oh, for heaven's sake, Miriam, get up, you're making a scene. I tried to sit up, but the pain was too much. Mom, I really don't feel good. It's probably just nerves, my dad chimed in. Walk it off. Ben stood up, looking serious. She needs medical attention right now. Clara rushed over, her wedding dress rustling. Miriam, what are you doing? This is my wedding day. I'm sorry, I gasped. I didn't mean to. You never mean to, Clara snapped, but somehow, you always manage to steal the spotlight. Can't you let me have one day? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You think I planned this? My mom stepped in. Miriam, that's enough. We're not leaving your sister's wedding. Stop being so dramatic and get back to your seat. Ben's voice cut through the noise. If you won't take her seriously, I'll be fine, Dad said. Take her if you have to, but don't expect us to leave the reception. As Ben helped me up, I looked at my family. They were already turning away, putting on fake smiles for the guests. Clara was back on the dance floor, laughing like nothing had happened. The drive to the hospital was a painful blur, both physically and emotionally. How could they just leave me like that? In the emergency room, doctors hurried to hook me up to machines, while Ben stayed by my side, holding my hand through it all. Finally, a doctor came over with my test results. Miss Thompson, you're having a serious flare-up of your condition. It's a good thing you came in when you did. This could have been very dangerous if left untreated. I let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, good thing. As the nurses got me settled into a room for overnight observation, I couldn't stop thinking about my family, still at the wedding, dancing and celebrating while I was lying in a hospital bed. Ben squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry, Miriam, you deserve better than that. For the first time that day, I allowed myself to cry. Why don't they care, Ben? Am I really that unimportant to them? He didn't have an answer, and neither did I, but as I lay there, hooked up to IVs and monitors, one thing became clear: I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep putting myself last for people who wouldn't even leave a party to take me to the hospital. As I drifted off to sleep, I made a promise to myself. Things were going to change. I just had to figure out how. A week in the hospital felt like forever. The only good thing was Ben, who visited every day, bringing me books and keeping me company. Not once did my family show up or even call. When I finally got discharged, I went home, completely drained, both physically and emotionally. When I opened the door, Mom, Dad, and Clara were sitting in the living room, acting like it was just another day. Oh, you're back, Mom said, barely looking up from her magazine. There's laundry that needs doing. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious right now? I just got out of the hospital. Dad cleared his throat. About that, Miriam, we think you owe your sister an apology for ruining her wedding. Clara nodded, her face full of fake hurt. Do you know how embarrassing that was? Everyone was talking about it. Something inside me snapped. Apologize? I nearly died. And you want me to apologize? Don't be so dramatic. Mom sighed. It's always something with you, isn't it? That was it, the final straw. I'm done, I said, my voice shaking. I'm done with all this toxicity. I'm out of here. I stormed to my room, threw some clothes into a bag, and walked out. They didn't even try to stop me. Ben was waiting outside in his car. One look at my face, and he knew. You're staying with me, he said. It wasn't a question. The next few weeks passed in a blur of doctor's appointments and work. I threw myself into my job, determined to prove that I could succeed without my family's so-called support. One day, I was going through some old papers when I found documents about a trust fund in my name. Curious, I called the bank. I'm sorry, Miss Thompson, but that account has been almost drained, the banker said. My head was spinning. That's impossible. I've never touched it. After some digging, I discovered the ugly truth. My parents had been taking money from my trust fund for years, using it to pay for Clara's expensive lifestyle. I felt sick. Not only had they neglected me emotionally, but they had also been stealing from me. I knew I needed help, so I called a lawyer named Tom. After reviewing the documents, Tom looked serious. This is a big deal, Miriam. Your parents could face criminal charges for this. Part of me wanted to let it go, to just walk away, but a stronger part of me was done being pushed around. What do we do? I asked. Tom leaned forward. We investigate, we gather evidence, and then we make them face the consequences of what they've done. As I nodded, I felt a mix of sadness and determination. This wasn't how I imagined my life would turn out, but I knew it had to be done. For once, I was standing up for myself. That night, as Ben and I sat on his couch, I couldn't help but reflect on everything. You okay? Ben asked, wrapping his arm around me. I don't know, I admitted. I'm angry and hurt, but I also feel free. Is that strange? He shook his head. Not at all. You're finally putting yourself first. And that's a good thing. I leaned into him, realizing he was right. For the first time in my life, I was prioritizing my own well-being. It felt scary, but right. Whatever happens next, I said, I'm ready. Little did I know, the storm that was about to hit my family would change everything, but this time, I wouldn't be the one suffering. This time, I would be the one in control. As the weeks turned into months, my life changed dramatically. I landed the biggest client of my career, putting me on the fast track for an executive position. The day I signed the contract, I thought about how my family would have brushed this off, but Ben, he threw me a surprise party. I'm so proud of you, he said, handing me a glass of champagne. You deserve this. Then, on a quiet Sunday morning, Ben got down on one knee. Miriam, will you marry me? With tears in my eyes, I said yes. We decided to have a small, intimate wedding, everything my sister's wedding wasn't. Meanwhile, Tom had been investigating my family's finances. One day, he called me into his office, looking grim. Miriam, it's worse than we thought. Your father has been embezzling money from his company to fund Clara's lifestyle. I felt sick to my stomach. What do we do? Tom laid out the options, and after a sleepless night, I made my decision. I anonymously tipped off my dad's company about the embezzlement. The fallout was quick and harsh. Dad was fired and faced criminal charges. Our family name, once respected, was now ruined in our community. Then I got a call from Mom. Miriam, please, we need your help. Your father, the company is pressing charges. I took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Mom, I can't help you. But we're family, she cried. Family doesn't treat each other the way you treated me, I replied, and hung up. Next was Clara. Her perfect life had fallen apart. Rick had left her, and without Dad's stolen money, she couldn't keep up her fancy lifestyle. Miriam, I'm so sorry, she sobbed over the phone. I didn't know about the money. Please, can we start over? Part of me wanted to forgive her, to be the bigger person, but then I remembered all the years of neglect, of always being second. I'm sorry, Clara, I can't do this anymore. I wish you the best, but I need to focus on my own life now. When I hung up, I felt lighter, like a burden had been lifted. For the first time, I had chosen myself. The day of my wedding finally arrived. It was nothing like Clara's big, over-the-top event, just me, Ben, and our closest friends in a beautiful garden. As I walked down the aisle, all I saw in Ben's eyes was love, no judgment, no comparison, just pure acceptance. I do, I said, my voice strong and sure. At the reception, I looked around at the small gathering. These were people who truly cared about me, who had stood by me through everything. My colleague Sarah raised a toast. To Miriam and Ben, two of the kindest, strongest people I know, may your life together be filled with love and respect. As Ben and I swayed during our first dance, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. What are you thinking about? Ben asked softly. I'm thinking about how far I've come, I replied, and how excited I am for our future. He smiled and pulled me closer. Me too. I love you, Miriam. I love you too, I said, and I meant it, not just the words, but the promise of a life where I was valued, respected, and loved unconditionally. As the night came to an end, I felt a deep sense of peace. My family's actions had consequences, but I no longer felt responsible for fixing their mistakes. I had my own life to live, my own family to build, with Ben by my side. Looking at my new husband, I smiled. The road ahead might not be perfect, but I knew one thing for sure, I would face it on my own terms, surrounded by people who truly loved me, and that, I realized, was the sweetest justice of all.